Hi everyone, this is Alec from AJ Farms, and today I will be transplanting our kale into bigger pots because it's been growing in this little aluminum container since December 31st. That's when I planted it. And it is sorely overdue for transplanting and separation because it's not really growing that much right now. And then after we transplant the kale, I also want to give you an update on how the basil and the leeks are doing from the peat pellets video. So first, I'm going to show you look at the kale, and you can tell that it needs to be transplanted because some of the leaves are starting to turn a little bit yellow, which isn't great, and it would honestly just benefit from having a little bit of separation and a bit more space. So I'm going to unpack the kit that I got to plant these in, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Alright, so this is the kit that I got. It's from Fairy Morse. It's a seed starting kit, but you can also use it to transplant up larger seedlings. This comes with 18 pots. They're about 3 inches each and has 2 trays that hold each of them, so each tray holds about 9 containers. So I'm going to unpack this and then show you how I'm going to transplant these kale seedlings. Alright, so here's a better look at the individual little trays. It's about 3 inches long, or 3 inches wide, so 3 by 3. And these actually came connected in one solid tray, like this. You could leave it like this if you want to, but it's a little bit awkward to kind of hold and move around. So I recommend breaking it apart, and you can see it's already trying to separate it this corner right here. Oh. This is very difficult to do with one hand. But you just very gently separate that out, and then you have an individual tray. So I'm going to separate all these out, and then I will fill them with soil, and I'll get back to you on how I'm going to very carefully remove my basil seedlings. So here's our tray with the containers filled with soil. I lightly pressed each one down just to try to get some of the air pockets out. They're not completely filled to the top, but that's okay because these, once the kale gets situated in these containers, I'm going to start hardening it off to go outside because you can plant these outside a little bit before your last frost date, because kale is a very cold hardy plant. Alright, so I'm going to scoot this tray out of the way for a minute. And since I knew this project would be quite messy, I've already put some paper down to protect the floor. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a plastic spoon, and I'm going to very gently try to ease the plants out of the soil without tearing or doing too much damage to their roots. Because if you look in here, you'll see that these have very, very thin and fragile stems, so I want to be sure not to break those. But I also need to make sure not to damage the roots too much. So what I'm going to do is take this spoon, and if I lift this plant up gently, oh, we have one that didn't quite make it, so we'll take that out and throw it to the side. But I have a clump right here, so I'm going to gently dig this spoon in and kind of pop it up to try to get all of those roots together. And then I will gently break apart the clump, trying to leave most of the dirt in the container so that I can separate these as gently as possible. There we go. So now we have a nice little kale seedling with a decent amount of roots on it. So now what I'm going to do with this is take it, pull this tray back over, and I'll put it in this corner right here. So I'm going to use this spoon to make a little bit of a divot. Stick the kale seedling gently in there, and this will give it a lot more room. Then I will smooth the soil around and press it gently into place. Then what I will do is water all of these into place and put them in the grow tent. So I will show you what that looks like when I'm done. Alright, so here's the kale, and it's not final, but it's our temporary in-between home until it's ready to go outside. After I planted them in the containers, I made sure to water them very well because you want to make sure you don't expose those roots to dry soil or it can cause really bad transplant shock, and plants this young most likely wouldn't recover from that, so I wouldn't have any kale to put outside. So what you want to do after you water them, and this is very important if they're in a tray of some sort that catches any water that drips out, about 30 minutes after you water them and put them away, you want to make sure to check the trays, and if there's any extra water in there, you want to make sure you go ahead and dump all that out. You definitely don't want your plants sitting in standing water because that can be a host for a whole bunch of disease. It can also cause root rot, which then kills off the plants, and it's just a mess. So you want to make sure that the soil is nice and moist, but not too wet, not sopping wet or dripping, or you don't want any standing water on the top or on the bottom. But that is all for the kale. It's going to sit here. I'm going to give it about a week and see how it's doing, and then if it's growing and still doing pretty well, I'm going to start hardening it off so I can go outside. But now I'm going to give you that update on the basil and leeks that we planted in the last video. Alrighty, so here is the basil. It is just starting to come up. I still do keep the humidity dome on top of it, or the little plastic lid, just to help keep everything nice and warm in there. I also put it on our heat mat because I accidentally overwatered it a little bit, and I wanted the pellets to not quite dry out, but to help evaporate off some of that extra water. So I'm going to go ahead and put the humidity dome back on, and I think once maybe 2 or 3 more pellets show some signs of life, I will keep it off so that everything will have a good chance to grow and not get too oversaturated with humidity. So right here we have our leeks, and as you can see, they're just starting to come up, which is super exciting because I've never grown leeks before and I'm really excited to try one. I know they take forever to grow, but that's even more reason to start them inside to give them a bit of a head start on the season. Zoom in just a little bit more. So you can see at the top right that we have a little sprout right there. Not everything has a seed sprouting yet, which is fine. So hopefully what we can do is, as these get a little bit bigger, we can separate them out like we did with our kale and put them in their own containers. But that is all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.